Hello, everyone. Welcome to Music Theory Logic. My name is Andrew Krause, and today is going to be another music theory breakdown. Let's go ahead and look at our logic session. So here we are in logic. Today's song that we're going to talk about is The Bones by Maren. This is a giant record, to say the least. Most of you have probably heard this. If you haven't heard this, I encourage you to go check out the original track. If this is your first music theory breakdown you're watching, I don't actually play the original tracks, but I'm going to play my rendition. So what I've done is I've recreated every sound that we hear in the instrumental, and then we're going to look at a scale to figure out where those notes came from. So because this instrumental is somewhat repetitive, I'm going to play through basically the second chorus. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Here's what's verse 2. Here comes chorus 2. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there just because the instrumental somewhat repetitive. We do get more sonic development as the track progresses, but we're here to talk about where the notes, where the melodies and chords come from. So let's go ahead and take a look at our reference key. So this song is in the key of D major. Now, the notes in D major, there are two black keys. We have F sharp and C sharp. These two. Now again, so I've written this scale in 2 octaves. The reason I wrote it in 2 octaves today is so that we could, without a doubt, see where these chords come from. To remind you, our most basic major key is C major. That's why C is such an important note. It's labeled on our piano roll. It's also, if you've ever taken piano lessons, you may remember the idea of middle C. So this note C is really important. And it's important because if we put all the white keys starting from C to C, you'll notice the only notes we have here are white keys. And this is our most basic major scale. So this is a major scale built on this root note C. If I move that note to D, the same major scale formula is transposing up, as we would say. But we'll notice that we actually have 2 black keys. So where do those black keys come from? It really just comes from the setup of the piano and where the black keys are in relationship to each white key. So for instance, because we're starting from D and the note after D, E, doesn't have a black key coming, that's the source of this black key. Starting on C, by skipping black keys, we get all white keys in the beginning. So that's kind of where the notes come from. Cool, so let's listen to the scale. It's going to sound like a major scale. Again, most people probably heard singers sing like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Most people I've come in contact with, even if they've never played an instrument before, are familiar with a major scale. Here is what it sounds like. Nice. So again, that was 2 octaves. That means we went to D and we kept going to the next D. So we can see where these chords come from. So these are the 4 chords involved in the song. Now in Bones, we have 2 different chord progressions. So we have a chord progression on the verse and one on the chorus. However, they use these same 4 chords. So these chords are some of the most common chords, referencing the last song I did, Holy by Justin Bieber and Chance Rapper. They used a different chord progression, but the same chords. So we have a D major chord. That's our most basic chord starting on the 1. It has the 1, the 3, and the 5. That's where these come from. Another chord we'll need is the 4 chord. In D major, 4, we're talking about scale degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4. G is a 4. That's why we call this a 4 chord. These other notes are just coming from scale degree skipping as well. So I'm just using notes from the scale starting on the 4. That gives us a G major chord. That's this. If I do the same from the 5, 5 is going to be A. We get A, C sharp, E. That's our A major chord. And then finally, if we do it from the 6th, and in D major, the 6th, which happens to be the relevant minor, is B. If we skip from B, we will get a B minor chord. That's where this last chord comes from. Cool, so these are all the chords that we need. Let's get into the actual song. So most of the guitar that you were hearing was guitar that I recorded myself. In the past, I've been doing these breakout videos showcasing how to play this stuff. I haven't felt like people have been as interested in that as the general theory breakdowns. So if you'd like to have a breakout lesson about how to play this on guitar, just leave me a comment. I'd be more than happy to oblige. Cool. So let's look at, so again, the blue line at the top, this is audio that I recorded, but like I did with Wishing Well, I doubled that up in MIDI just so that we could see the notes. So the chord progression we have here is a G major chord, followed by a D major, followed by an A, or followed by a B minor, followed by an A major. Now it is an arpeggio. What that means is the guitar player is not playing the chord one at a time, but they're hitting one note and then a second note. So the pattern for this is going 1, 3 in terms of the chords. So that's like the first 2 notes. It's going 1, 3, 1, 3, and then to the next chord 1, 3, 1, 3, to the next chord 1, 3, 1, 3, next chord 1, 3, 1, 3. Same scale tones, just different chords. Now, rhythmically speaking, the harmonic motion of the song is kind of important to look at. These notes I'm highlighting are where the chords essentially change. We'll notice that the chords change on essentially a dotted quarter note. If you're not familiar with those rhythms, it's basically like we get a chord on the first line, and then we get a chord. If we're in 16th note grid, it's going to be 6 boxes later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. And then the next measure, so on 2, that pattern repeats. There's new chords, but we have the same, again, it's called a dotted half, tied into an 8th, tied to a half for the harmonic motion. For us, we could just think we have a chord on the first beat, and then we have a chord 6 boxes later if we're in 16th notes, so that's 6 16th notes later. And this is actually going to continue for the whole song. I mentioned in the beginning the chords are going to change for our chorus, but the actual speed that we change chords is not going to change. And that's really common. That is something that helps us to, when a song has chords that are changing on a rhythm, we get really comfortable with that, and that's part of the groove. So if we have a new chord progression, one thing to help tie it to the first one is to have that groove still present, so the same movement between chords. Cool. We move on. Let's talk about the drums. Drums are quite simple here. We have basically aside from the choruses, we have a kick drum and basically like a clap or a snap sort of sound. The drum machines I'm using are default Logic instruments. Again, this isn't about like making the sounds as perfect as the record, because again, that would be somewhat of a waste of time since we don't own the rights to this. But essentially, I am using Snapback, which is a built-in default drum machine, and hit machine for my kick drums. I'm also doubling up with a rim shot. Cool. So our kick pattern is repeating the whole time. Let's solo that out. We get this. So if we do that with our metronome, what's kind of interesting is that repeats that kick pattern the entire song, again, for the different chord progression for the chorus. This first rhythm, that looks exactly like our chord change, so that kind of makes sense. It's like the whole band is accenting the 1 and then the 6th 16th note, or I guess the 7th 16th note, accenting the dotted half note and the next 8th note. And then we get this other more interesting pattern, which is basically like a really fast 16th note kick pattern. We're going on the 2nd 16th note and the 3rd 16th note. Cool. So you could recreate that in your session. This song is at 77 beats per minute. So if you match this at 77 beats per minute, that should look a lot like, or sound a lot like, Bones. Cool. So moving on to our first chorus. This is going to be the same chord progression that we find in the following choruses, but we get some, again, sonic development. What I mean by that is the drums get bigger, so we get a crash and like louder cymbals. We get some more pad instruments that are more prominent in the mix. We get a violin sort of accent thing. But yeah, really, this chorus has the same stuff going on as chorus 2 or the final chorus. Nice. So let's talk about the chord progressions. Again, the verse chord progression is G major, followed by D major, followed by B minor, followed by A major. The harmonic motion, again, we're in the key of D major. I named those chords in the beginning. The G is the 4, D is 1, B minor is 6, A major is 5. So the verse is a 4, 1, 6, 5 chord progression. Then our chorus chord progression is D major, so 1, followed by G major, 4, 1, 4. A major, that's 5, followed by B minor, 6. You can actually kind of see that this keeps going up. That's our 1, 4, 5, 6. Now what's interesting is this note that we start on. It is the 1 chord, so a D major, but that's not a D. That is an F sharp. Now, what does that mean? That means that this chord is inverted. What does that mean? Well, it means a note other than the main note from the chord is in the bass. So why would someone do that? One of the reasons is that it creates this ascending bass line. That's pretty cool, where it just like keeps going up. If we had put this bass note in the root, it's either going to go down or up by a lot to get to our next note. So yeah, you could think of as an inverted chord as a slightly different flavor or color of the main chord. You can use them somewhat interchangeably. They're going to feel slightly different, but you can use inversions as ways to bring out certain bass lines, so certain or melodic lines. You can also use them to make it easier to play. So actually, like playing the D major like this, F sharp, A, D. If you're on a piano, like over here, it's easier to move to G than all the way over from D major. So chord inversions when we're playing piano also function to make something easier to play. Cool. Let's look at the bass line. The bass line is literally just mimicking the left hand of the piano player, the low notes. Our drum pattern is staying exactly the same. Yeah, cool. Um, then let's go to second verse. Oh, finally, let me not forget to mention these violins. Uh, they're playing the note D, and it's like at the end of the first group of four. They're doing D on eighth notes, and at the halfway through this, like right before that measure, the second time around, they're doing the same note, but the first rhythm is a whole eighth note faster. Passes like really quickly in the song. Maybe caught it right there. Let's hear the next one. Nice. So those violins really just add a little bit more ornamentation. They sort of accent part of the song. They work well. Nice. Moving into verse 2, guitar comes back. It's the same section as the beginning. We get that for just 2 measures. And then we bring in the drums and bass. This is new. We did not have drums and bass in the beginning part of the verse where she's singing. So this serves to create some development in the track. Now, if we look at the actual, let me get out of the bass. If we look at our actual drums, we are bringing in some of the, let's hear this. So we're bringing in our kick drum there. Let's look at our second chorus. So the beginning, we just get this like giant drum sound, but the second chorus, what makes it bigger is we get a crash cymbal, and we get this slightly sung eighth note hi-hat rhythm. So again, if you're using a digital audio workstation, a DAW, you can draw in eighth notes and then select eighth note in your quantize function and add some swing. It's really subtle. It almost feels straight, but when I was charting it in straight compared to the original song, it just felt a little rigid. So a very subtle amount of swing goes a long way to adding some movement in a song, that movement that we usually find really cool. Nice. So the bass line of our verse that comes in, it's kind of cool. It's steady eighth notes, but changing same root notes. So G, D, B, A. The difference is that they're steady eighth notes, which again makes the second verse have some like more driving rhythm behind it. But the notes and where they change mimic exactly where these chords and the notes change from the guitar. Cool. We also get the piano in the last 4 measures of our chord progression in the second verse. Then the song is going to go into the second chorus, full second chorus, and then we get kind of an interesting section. Doesn't happen all the time. It's like an extra half of chorus, an extra 4, into what is very similar to the third verse, but sort of functions as a bridge. There's a lot more vocal stuff going on here. And then finally, it comes back for our final chorus. Interesting thing, this chorus isn't a 16-bar end chorus, but it's rather the standard 8 bars. And then we get a little outro. It's like the verse. Cool. So I hope that this helped you to better understand the song Bones by Maren Morris and where the notes from the instrumental come from. Hopefully you are already seeing ways that you could better use music theory to bring about development in a song, or perhaps this demystified something that you've heard and didn't know how to do. But yeah, in this song, we saw chords that came from a major key. We saw similar rhythmic progression between the chords, between the verse and the chorus. And we saw a different chord progression for the verse and the chorus. All in all, I would say this song is amazingly written. I really enjoy it, and I hope this helped you to better understand it if you do enjoy it. And if you don't, hopefully this helped you to better understand how music theory is used. And again, it's not like you need to approach a song from like a theoretical or music theory standpoint. But if you say write a chord progression that you like the sound of, it allows you to identify why that chord progression works, a scale it comes from, and perhaps it would allow you to know some other melodies or chords to use later in the song, or just to better understand your own work. So anyway, thank you for hanging out with me here at Music Theory Logic. Once again, my name's Andrew. I will link to my music theory textbook below. I'll also link to some of my original music. If you found this helpful or have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or leave a comment below. I would be honored if you'd subscribe to the channel to stay up on future content, but I'll leave that up to you. Till then, happy producing.